Ladies and gentlemen, we have hit the jackpot because the ANC thinks whites are human beings too.
Not so fast, Ramon. Unfortunately, you see, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a country where there's no water. And no electricity. But the water is a much pressing more concern. Because if you think about it, like, you can live without electricity, but you can't live without water. Now, for those of you who haven't been noticing, there's no water in Gauteng. Kind of because some guy didn't turn the tap on. You may recall that article. But also because the water treatment plants in Gauteng are basically kaput. The problem inevitably becomes that those water treatment plants and the ability to transport water around the country are kaput everywhere. And so what you're seeing in Gauteng is actually basically a prelude to what's happening in many other places. And this is getting to a point now where basically no one has any water. And in a country that has a water scarcity anyway, having no water to the local population probably isn't the best way to create social cohesion.
Social cohesion, I love that term. It means literally nothing. But not to worry, Paul Mashatile, the Deputy President of South Africa, is on the case because he says it has reached such a point where the national government has to step in now because many areas of the country do not have water and they have water cuts. Ironically, it's the national government that caused all these issues in the first place through dedicated deployment and sort of non-maintenance, because if 50% of the water does not reach the intended consumer, the reason for that is a lack of maintenance. It's very much the old story in Africa. You build something, but to maintain it is a bit colonial, so they're not going to do it. But not to worry. Paul Mashatile has come out to say, don't worry guys, the water crisis is happening, but the Afrikaners are going to help us, namely the civic organizations like Solidarity and AfriForum. What is your take on this, Byron?
Yeah, there's a reason they're doing that, Ramon, and that is because Solidarity and AfriForum still hold the majority of the skill. Let us not forget that a lot of the infrastructure in South Africa was created during the apartheid regime, and so really the Afrikaners are the one that understand how the actual infrastructure works, because many of the new dispensation never actually bothered to learn, because, that would be like racism and stuff. But No Drop, which is a organization, had basically come out with a report and said, why has all this happened? And they said, and I quote, decline in water management, water loss management practices, lack of metering and poor infrastructure maintenance in the majority of municipalities. Yes, it's governance, basically. It's governance. Like, no one is surprised. But the net problem now is that you need to maintain. And as Kenneth Michoud said to us of ACDP when we interviewed him, the native population don't like maintaining. And unfortunately, if you continue to not maintain for 20 years, which no maintenance has occurred over 20 years, stuff breaks. Guess what, Ramon? It is breaking. It is breaking to such a degree that they suggest that by 2030, only 17% of water will actually be available anymore, because the rest of it will have disintegrated due to failing infrastructure. Yeah, that's not good times, mate.
It's amazing the rhetoric in South Africa, right? We want to, we're going to burn people alive because we want to vote. And then you vote. And then 30 years later, you have no water or electricity. Democracy is really shit, huh? If you don't have foresight. But anyway, here's the issue. Solidarity and AfriForum actually have a bit of leverage now. And they are hopefully going to help, but with conditions attached. I'm not sure what those conditions are, but I don't see AfriForum downing tools and saying, yes, let's jump at the drop of a hat to help the government who physically and literally hates us. But here's the other thing, Byron. The fact that the deputy president himself, which is, a high-ranking official in the state, is groveling to Afrikaners to help with the water crisis. What does that say about the future of this country? I know it's election time. I know it's politicking. I know all that stuff. If Julius Malema was deputy president, he would never go to the Afrikaners for help. But Paul Mashatile is. Am I thinking, or are we saying, that this is more likely to happen because maybe the ANC have decided going with the EFF is maybe not a viable strategy for the future? So we'll just go and play our cards with Afrikaners.
That may be the case, Ramon, but I think actually there's a little bit of an easier way to understand this, and that is that the government has run out of skill, because they chased a lot of the skill off. Even where they have developed skill in the local native population, they've not employed those individuals at a sustainable salary. So many of those individuals have left. You may recall, Ramon, that we actually did a video on this some time ago showing that actually the majority of people that leave the country are actually black. They're not all white. Yes, there is a sizable amount of whites that leave, but the black population, the educated black population that leave, is actually rather sizable. And there you go. That's your new skill, the ones that you're developing, and they leave. Now, the actual report highlights, the report that we were just citing, highlights that this is what you need to fix water. You need the infrastructure repaired and upgraded. You need to identify and fix leaks. You need to ensure that there's an adequate budget for infrastructure management. Now, please understand that budget part's very important. You need a renewal and extension of certain waterway leases. You need addressing vandalisms. You need to stop them stealing copper pipes, basically. And you need to improve access to clean drinking water, which is a problem right around the country. But going back to the budget part, there's no money. They looted it. It's gone. They have no money for any form of maintenance. To get people to go around and fix things requires resource. Where they're going to get the resource? They don't have the money to pay for it. So what they actually need is they need to attract private investment. The problem is that private investment don't want to come in and just invest in an infrastructure that basically isn't going to go anywhere, because they know that any money that goes into the government's hands is basically going to get looted. And so the government themselves do recognize through their water resource infrastructure, their SOC bill, and the working committees surrounding that, they do recognize that one of the problems that we have in the country is the lack of accountability and non-performance. And so what their idea is go out to people that have a track record of performance and remedies, almost like Ramon. It's a return to meritocracy. But don't get too excited. It may seem like that, but it's actually, I'm sure there's another way we could phrase this.
It's very odd when they say that, we need key interventions for water, and it's like identifying leaks and like make sure there's enough budget for maintenance and to ensure that we can repair and upgrade pipes. I mean, any literal retard knows this, right? I can ask my 7-year-old daughter, like, how do you fix water in Joburg? And she'll be like, make sure the water gets to where it's supposed to go. So that means fixing the pipe on the way there. Like the fact that the ANC cannot know this, or the cadres it deploys cannot know this, or doesn't care about this whatsoever until it's crisis point, until it's such a crisis that they have to bring in the Afrikaners to tell them what is the most obvious thing in the world. And people still vote for these idiots. And they think that these people are like, can galvanize the highest aspirations of the masses. I mean, it literally is retardanistan, where you have people on the outskirts of society and the outskirts of government saying, government, the best thing you can do for water is like to fix things and make sure there's maintenance and make sure that you renew the pipeline. I mean, come on. This is a joke. This is a joke. But this is leverage for the Afrikaners, and hopefully they're using that leverage to have much needed reform in the sector.
Yes, but as I said, there is another way that you potentially could reframe this, and that is that let us not forget that Gwede Mutashe wants to do fracking in the Free State, which needs a shitload of water, right? So, I mean, they're actually starting to recognize water is needed even for our electricity crisis. Yeah, so you want to reindustrialize the economy, right? Yeah, you need water for a lot of that. A lot of factories need water. And so what they are starting to recognize is that if you don't maintain your infrastructure, you ain't going to grow the economy. If you don't have an economy to loot, nothing to loot, my friend. Now, all of that becomes really, really important. And I'll tell you one reason why it becomes important. And that is because the country's broke. There's nothing left to loot. And so what you're finding is that many individuals in power don't want to stay in power anymore. Because it's like there's no incentive to. There's nothing to steal. How's the ANC going to hold on to any form of semblance of power if even their own political parties, the members there, they don't really want to be there? Because like, why would you? I mean, why would you want to deal with Ditsy Butler when you're not even getting paid for it? Like, no one wants to do that.
Yeah, there's a world of difference between grifting and actually doing the work. They've been grifting for 30 years. Now that the work has to be done, they want the Afrikaners to do it.